Go ahead.
There you go.
I'd like to call this meeting of Festus City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Councilman Boyer.
Here.
Councilman Collier.
Here.
Councilwoman Templeton.
Here.
Councilman Weiner. Councilman Dennis. Councilman Benz.
Here.
Councilman Cook.
Here.
Councilman Tennant.
We do have a quorum. Gentlemen, this is a work session and
That's all good.
it's all good. Council persons. This is a work session to discuss the budget. So we will begin. We have to stop at 10 minutes till 6 because we have a public hearing that we must have for setting the tax rate. So I will turn it over to Greg.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you all for being here. Myself, Stephanie, are here to answer questions. We also have most of city staff here to answer questions. I'll just lead things off to state the obvious, which is all the department heads, all the directors really did a great job. They came to our budget meetings prepared. They asked good questions. They also had good answers for questions that were lobbied at them. What you have in front of you as far as the highlights, there are two adjustments from the last time you had a chance to look at this. After talking with Mark Harris and his department, we've decided to roll the code enforcement position into the position of the 3 building inspectors. One, because that is a very difficult position to keep filled. On the few times that we have been able to keep it filled, that person gets their ICC training and either they move up in the department, such as Jimmy and Heather have, or they move on to another department. So we felt that a division of those duties amongst the 3 of them and using some of the salary from that position would be a way to stay on top of code enforcement because of their knowledge of the city and obviously their knowledge of the codes. So that is one of the adjustments. And then beginning with the 1st of January, we're creating crew leader positions in street and water sewer. This is to get us a little bit more of a succession plan in place for our public works department. That way, when you have the foreman out of town or sick, or they leave the position, you have someone that has been designated as someone who can stand in, fill in, or perhaps even be promoted into that position. So those are the 2 big adjustments. Just as a recap, the COLA this year is 8% for anyone that is below scale 26 on our salary scales. It's 5% for anyone over that. Basically, if you want to look at it from a dollar amount, it's about $50,000 is where that break is between the 8 and the 5%. We are looking at health insurance increase cost. The entirety of that will be absorbed by the city. So no hit to the bottom line for our employees. Also, we've made some adjustments as far as police and fire uniforms. We've upped that $100. We've also upped the uniform expense for the laborers up to $500. Really, the main reason behind that is a pair of work boots are outrageously priced these days. So you're going to spend $150, $200 on a good, safe pair of work boots. A number of capital projects in here. If we can find 8 police cars, we'll buy 4. We may not buy 8, but there's 8 in the budget. That one of 4 of those are a carryover from last year. We do have some smaller upgrades for the fire department. We're looking at a new 550 dump for the parks department. Also in there is the South Second parking lot that we've talked about already. Also a new salt storage facility for the street department. The main reason behind that is it will give us the capacity to take a full barge of salt. We won't have to pay as much because we will be able to take the full allotment that they bring in a single shipment. Beyond that, the water sewer SCADA system, estimated to be at about 465, but 100,000 of that is being covered by a grant we received from the county. That is a ARPA grant that we received from Jefferson County. We also have our sewer rehab in there, as we've done in years past. Doing some upgrades to the meeting room at the library. I know some of our council persons have noticed they're in desperate need of new audio visual equipment. So that is in the budget here as well. We do have to also replace our mosquito fogger, as it is at the end of life. It is past the end of life. I know it was a topic of discussion last year. Basically, going into this year, we will carry over a water sewer rate freeze. The rates for on water and sewer will not go up for the 23-24 fiscal year. We are anticipating about an 8% increase in sales tax, and by the agreement we hammered out back in 2019, that means that the general fund transfers to public safety will also go up by that same amount. Beyond that, there are some projects that we have in there. I don't want to bore you with a whole bunch of detail, but I do want to make sure that you have a chance to ask any questions that you may have, and we can go around the room or everybody can jump in at once, however you would like to handle it. I know there's a couple things that we want to talk about as far as capital outlay, some parks projects that I think all of us have been talking about for a while. So I do want to get to that, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask whatever questions they may have prior to jumping into that. So I'll stop talking for a minute.
Greg, on the salt.
Mhm.
You said with this, by getting this bigger dome we're gonna get.
Mhm.
We can get a full load. Oh, so we're putting a second one in, or we
Yeah.
just making that one?
No, we're putting a second one in.
Okay. Is there room to like double it? I mean, for the fact that if you get one full load, will there be enough to put some more in that one along with the other where we get two at a discount rate?
Well, we have
I didn't know how big it was gonna be.
we have capacity to hold about 500 ton. If we're really pushing it, we can cram in about 600.
Okay.
A typical barge load, Matt, correct me if I get this wrong, is typically 1,000 tons. So we're looking at a facility the same size that would be built at a different location. We're looking out at the lagoon site out at Kreitz Park. That might be a good location for a second salt storage building. The other space there on the Public Works parking lot is actually supposed to be, and we've been trying to price that together here for about a year now, is a water sewer materials storage building as well. So there's another shed that's going to be built there. Obviously, the cost of building that has gone through the roof. Now we've adjusted the pricing for that to go into the next fiscal year. But some early estimates that we had on what it would cost to put up just a simple pole barn that we could store pipe and some of the fittings, hydrants and things like that. That's going to be built on the lot adjacent to the existing storage shed.
Okay, yeah, I was just kind of curious. I mean, you can never get enough salt because you don't know what kind of year you're gonna have, but.
It gives us the flexibility too, Bobby, of being able to, one of the things that we've always been hampered by, and I know Councilman Weiner and I have talked about this a lot, is when we buy it.
Right.
We typically wait until after the budget is passed, and then October, November, we're in hurry up mode to buy salt so that it will carry us through the winter.
Right.
Here, we'll be able to perhaps be able to buy it in the spring when it's doesn't cost as much, but the fact that we're also able to take a single allocation as opposed to essentially the provider having to divide it up and say, okay, so this city's going to take 200 ton, this city's going to take 100 ton, and then Festus is going to take the rest. Here, they know that they've got that full barge sold when it comes up the river.
Okay, that's good, because like you said, I know Mike Cook and all this others have said stuff about that. You're buying it at the right time, because I know we wait always the budget time. And we know you get a better deal afterwards than you do at the time you need it.
So if we build the second building, what you're saying is we can buy the whole barge and that comes at a discounted rate. But the salt doesn't go bad, right? It's no shelf life on it or,
No, it doesn't go bad.
okay, so we might buy a whole barge and not use it for 2 years, but we still have it. And now we're in the driver's seat of the price.
Correct.
So that's what I'm hearing and what I read. So
We can take advantage of better pricing for
Right.
two reasons, because of when we can buy it, but also the quantity that we'll be able to buy.
right. And taking the whole barge, we get a definite discount. So as I recall, so.
How long is that gonna take whenever we decide to do this, to build it? Is that like a 6 month or? I can't remember how long the other one took to build.
Obviously, it was a different time when the other one was built. I couldn't begin to tell you how long it would take for us to build the new building. I just know that we pretty much already have a spec on it, which is good. So we'll have something that we can put out for bids. You would hope that you would be able to construct it in the spring. And then we could go to market for salt purchases in summer and be able to maybe hopefully take advantage of some of the better pricing. But given the way things have gone, I would say, if it didn't happen until 2025 even, which is scary, but it's just that's the way things happen kind of in the market we're in right now.
My question is a pay scale question.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I just don't know this, but we're comparing the police to the fire. And on the fire side, it does say 252 hours of overtime. Is that salary rate, that pay rate, is that before overtime? Does everybody get overtime? What is the more accurate?
So the way FSLA calculates what we're used to talking about is 2080
Mhm.
on a 40-hour week. For police, they work off of 2229, and then the fire works off of what the number I believe is on
22,
this.
yeah, it was more than.
Yeah.
than that.
So it's mandatory overtime.
I think it's 2,756.
Right. So this rate that's on here, is this what they're actually paying, or this is base before that?
Base before all of the
Okay, so
other pieces.
what are we looking at then? I guess that's my question.
Sure.
Because our most tenured fireman is making about $8,000 less than our newest patrolman.
Right.
So I would just like to know what that true representation is. If we're trying to be competitive to get people that want to come here and want to stay, because I'm sure as Doug would agree, finding people that really want to do these jobs is getting harder and harder. So I would just kind of like to know what that true representation is. Does that make sense?
If Stephanie can't pull it up right away, we can certainly get that number to you so that you would know what the base rate is, which includes the overtime.
Right.
That's not a problem.
So Greg, with the proposed pay ranges and titles, which I think we already covered the title, but when would this scale take effect, and would it affect some of the people immediately, or this budget? So let's just say a street worker, his pay went from $10 to $12. When would that start, and how does that work?
October 1st.
October 1st. So start of our budget, which is
Now,
October.
the only piece that we put on a delay, Kevin, was the crew leader positions for public
Right.
works. And that was mainly done so that we can get our water sewer foreman position filled. And so give that person a chance to kind of get their feet underneath them, and then be able to bring someone else in that can start working in that kind of fill-in capacity, that standby capacity.
Mhm. So I think we've tried to fix the spots that we are lacking in.
Yeah, the big focus more than anything else, and if you notice there, we talked about the labor rate going to 1773. That's the base rate. That's before you go semi-skilled and skilled. But I know
Right.
Doug's fortunate right now in the fact that he's fully staffed on dispatchers. But getting them to come in at the rate we're paying,
Right.
especially with the amount of training that they have to get, So we're moving that up to into the $18 range. That'll start at 1813. So those areas and our clerical positions, our full-time clerical positions were areas that we really wanted to focus on.
Yeah, yeah, we had talked about the dispatching because that is a tough job. As far as some of the positions, I think we've kept in mind that fast food is catching up with some of our super skilled positions. So I think we've done a good job there. So that increased pay scale. So on our labor side over at Public Works, is there a time frame, or is that up to the supervisors and Matt to say you've met all the qualifications to move up to that skilled area because you've worked hard and got this, that, and another? Or is there still a time frame on that?
It's a combination. Going from semi-skilled and skilled does require that you get some certifications. It could be a DNR certification. It could be some training through LTAP or Missouri Rural Water or Missouri Public Works. So there's a requirement for them to do some training. Obviously, a CDL would qualify for that. They have to get that in order to be able to advance with the department anyway. So we do require them to do some basic training in order to move from base labor to semi-skilled. Now, skilled is something where they need seat time. That's time that they have to be able to spend in a truck or in a skid steer or a backhoe. That is something that's not necessarily a set time. It has more to do with their proficiency with the equipment.
Right. So if you knuckle down and work hard and get there and get it, there's a good chance that you can move up to that skilled without having an ungodly amount of time rate. At one time it was, which you fixed
Right.
years ago. But so you work hard, there is a reward. So
Right.
Okay. I think that's all I have with the numbers here. Is
And
that salt thing wrote in stone about that piece of property out the park? Because I'd sure like to see that be some sort of recreational ground,
It's not written in stone. No, it's a convenient place. The difficulty we have, go ahead. It would be back by well 10, which is an area that the public.
Oh, that's way back
anyway.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's way
It
back
would
there.
be out by the road.
Yeah, good answer, Matt. Good answer.
I have a couple of questions.
Stephanie needed to.
Yeah, I just
speak.
wanted to respond to Councilwoman Templeton's question. So the captain rate with the overtime is it's a little over 59,000, and the base firefighters with overtime is around 47,400. So just so you have what the overtime is with that.
So about 6,000. Difference between. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I just feel like our most tenured, 2015 is our most tenured, aside from the chief, not including him, our most tenured full-time fireman.
Mhm.
And they're making $59,000 a year. And our newest policeman is making 60,000.
Mhm.
I kind of feel like is there room in there to adjust something? Is it, and what does the industry hold? I know that
Right.
inherently your firemen make a little bit less than what your patrolmen do,
Mhm. Mhm.
but I'm just kind of curious. I want to make sure that people that, especially today, it's 9/11, especially today, those people
yeah,
are being compensated for what they
absolutely.
do.
The numbers are consummate still with the salary study that we had done, the compensation consultant that we brought in back in 2018. And historically, those numbers are less. The fact that they do have what appears to be a disparity also gives them the ability, as we've noted in this budget, to bring in more help as well. We're consummate, actually a little bit better than most of the area departments, certainly in this portion of the county. I know down south, we're head and shoulders above what they're paying in places like Perryville or Farmington. So that's not to say that we can't look some more and talk about that, but the numbers are in line with the recommendations of the compensation consultant And we pretty much adhered to that. We haven't messed with it too much other than with the COLAs. And then last year and this year, talking about moving the scales. So we're, because we're in year 4, going into year 5 of being with that, following that plan that was kind of laid out for us in 2018.
I just think it's something we have to watch. Just to make
Absolutely.
sure that we're attracting what we need to be attracting, because we've talked before, the fact that the city's not getting smaller.
No.
So with that comes multiple shifts, comes multiple battalions, becomes other things. We're gonna need qualified people that feel like they're being compensated, because and it's, I think firemen get more thanks than what policemen do sometimes, but it's still, you're risking your life every day.
Chief Brumbaugh was very clear. It was a singular focus coming into this budget year. He's on vacation, so that's the reason why he couldn't be here. Was that what they need more than anything else
Bodies.
is bodies. Yeah, it is manpower, and not how much we're paying that manpower. That was really, he's like, if we do one thing, it needs to be this.
Get butts in the chairs. Got it.
Mhm.
Yep. Makes sense.
So were there any union demands on the police or fire side that, I believe last I talked to you, was there anything that the union wanted, or how does that work? I'm not sure how it works with the city.
So we haven't had any meetings with the International Association of Firefighters or with FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police. We have had Jim Hetledge with Lashley Bear has been contacted by the legal rep for FOP 15. We're setting up some meetings. It looks like those will be in October and November to talk about the union demands for the police department. We don't know what those are yet. But so it's kind of a wait and see. We have not had any discussions, have had any, even a sniff of a conversation with IFF. Once we certified the bargaining unit, we haven't had a conversation with them at all.
So they're fully aware that we're doing a budget that we're going to vote on in October. So if they do have demands, do we have to revisit them and then adjust the budget if we think that's a fair and reasonable thing? Or do we have any obligation to approach them and say, hey, you need to get this in by this date?
No,
Question for our attorney there.
no, there's no obligation on our part, other than to be open to sit down with them and have a discussion. Brian, anything you'd like to add?
No, you've covered it.
Alrighty.
Last thing I had was, where are we at on the park,
What park?
the all-inclusive?
That's the conversation that we're working towards. So if you want to have it now, but that means I want to make sure we answer all of just the kind of the general operating budget questions first. We'll get those knocked out, and then we can talk about park projects and funding. You look like you're ready to go.
Well, so maybe in previous emails, we were informed about excess reserves that the city has. I want to wait for Mike to get back in here. That excess reserves that the city has as compared to what a normal city is. And as I understand it, this budget is based upon those excess reserves still, or is it based upon a normal reserve?
Normal, this budget does not contemplate changing the fund reserve policy at all.
Okay.
That's a discussion we have another time. This budget does not balance itself by taking that 39% fund reserve policy and changing it in any way whatsoever. That would have to be done by council action. Just as we did when we lowered it from 50 to 39. So
Right.
that takes an action of this body to change that number.
Yes, sir.
And there is nothing in this budget that is contingent on changing that number at all.
Okay, so if we were to talk about the parks, for instance, and like, pardon me, I noticed there weren't pickleball courts in here either, that those two items could be absorbed into this year's budget?
I always like to when I explain, what we call the green sheet, which is the big one, okay? I just say what you need to do is look at the first blue or green column, which is the projected fund balance at the start of the fiscal year, and then the fund balance that's projected to be at the end of the next fiscal year. And those numbers in those columns, with the exception of $500 in the NID assessment fund, are all positive numbers. Based on whether or not those numbers, whether those funds are encumbered or reserve, I'm not trying to say reserve, whether they're enterprise funds, meaning they have to be used for specific uses. Otherwise, those are dollars that are available to the city to invest in however it sees fit, however this body sees fit. So whether it's, at the start of the year, $8.1 million in the general fund reserve, or all the way over here on the right, the capital reserve number, which is about 2/3 of the way, which is the airport fund, which is $2.052 million. That's the type of reserves that the city has to utilize for capital projects.
Okay, so since I've been on the council, it's been a very, very conservative council. And there hasn't been a lot of dollars spent for capital campaigns, if you want to call it that, capital expenses for big projects for the betterment of our citizens and for the city. Like when we did the tennis courts, I mean, that was one of the first big deals that we did, and seeing how much excess that there is in these funds as compared to normal cities, it looks like it wouldn't be out of line for us to have a couple larger capital outlays that would work in order to for this budget also. And that was
sorry,
Go
Brian, I didn't mean to cut you off. So one of the things, for being the guy that's been around the longest, the reason that we've been so conservative with our funds, because there was a time to where we didn't know if we were going to have the money, and we were constantly in a building cycle of improving our services. And like Brian said, we have a very healthy bottom line here. I think the time has come, like Brian said, is to put some money back into our citizens. Now, I didn't see anything about a proposed pickleball court. Did I miss something?
In my Friday updates, you may recall, Kevin, I sent out an estimate that we got from McConnell and Associates. They're the folks who did the tennis court and basketball court over at Sunset Park. Basically the base pricing for that was $374, and then basing that on some lighting options that we had to look at. You would add another anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000, about $50,000 to it. So we were talking around $425,000, but that was something that I sent out. I'm looking at the date on the proposal. It would have been in mid-August.
Okay.
On one of my Friday updates.
So I've tried to study this a lot, and you can take it for that it's worth. But if we were to propose, and I think this $1 million to try to get this water park done, when we kind of know we have the property somewhere with working with the park board, do we have a piece of property that would work for the pickleball court? Because these are very popular activities. And if we were to propose, say, $1 million for the water park, and then $500,000 to get a future pickleball court, I think that's within reason. And where would that put us on the airport fund, which years ago, when we voted that whole thing in, and it was quite the battle, that we did have some restrictions. And basically, I think the bottom line is improvement of the city. Would we be getting into some of that funds, or we would draw it out of the more healthy funds? I think we more than enough have the money to do $1.5 million to complete these two projects. I didn't know if we had the property for the pickleball court. Brian probably knows. But
The proposal that we got from McConnell Associates was to use the existing space. It would add two more courts,
and bring it out towards the east.
The space actually is fairly well. It would cheat a little bit into the parking lot, but it would also cheat a little bit closer to Mill Street. and would give us, all new lining, post-tension concrete surface that's going to be good for 50 years. And it would float on the existing surface. McConnell and Associates, who was giving us tips pricing. So this is state contract pricing here. They would be able to, they say they'd be able to get it done and it would be open by springtime, in fact.
So do you think that the $500,000 is given that little bit of push that would cover that project?
More than
That would do it?
more than enough.
More than enough. And then the $1 million, that would give us enough to do it right. And like I said, used to be, show me where the money's coming from, Kevin. Well, we have Stephanie for that now. But
Well, if you recall
that's
the Kapaha Park splash pad rendering that I sent out from Aquatics, who does a full design build. They're a full design build contractor. They also work off of tips pricing. That was a 70-foot across setup. And it ran about $300,000 to $400,000. It depends on how involved you want to get when it comes to water consumption and use. That is what they call a to-waste system, meaning that the water that pumps out of the stuff that sprays all over the place just goes straight into the sewer.
Right.
Whereas you can do a recirculating system,
but
it's going to run you about $100,000 more.
right. Well, I went and actually looked at a couple as far as I could drive with my family. And, I that was one of the questions I asked. So is that crazy numbers that I'm throwing out there? Or,
All right.
I'm the oldest guy. I threw it out there now. Everybody get their chance. So, but would that get us to do a good one and do it right?
Can I
And
interject
not
here,
have to look
Kevin?
back and say, I wish I would have.
Can I interject here, Kevin?
Sure.
We've talked about this budget a little bit, and we weren't going to talk about this until the end of the meeting. But since it's apparent that it's something you want to talk about, I'm going to put this out here for you. I would like to, in this budget, build a splash pad, have an all-inclusive playground, and do the pickleball court. I would not be opposed to using airport money to do the splash pad and the all-inclusive playground. And we could take the extra $500,000 or $400,000 some to do the pickleball court out of the general reserve fund, which would leave us with roughly $7,500,000 in that fund. So we have the money. I'd like to do it this year. And with you all's approval, let's put it in this budget.
Right. And I think we've met our promise, sir, with our responsibility of that airport money. I think with what you're saying, we met our obligation to the people that we promised that we would use that money to improve this city. And
I believe I was on the council. I believe I was on the council at the same time. And
I think you were.
That's why I think we can take it out of the airport.
I feel good about it too.
Okay.
I feel good about it. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Greg.
Yeah.
On the pay scale, from what I'm looking at, under parks, for example, employee 3, been here since 2014, making 2157. But then you look at employee 4, they've been here since 2018 and they're making 2141. So you're talking a 16-cent difference. Are we sure the pay scales are we sure it's right all the way? Because I got marks all over the place.
Well, one of the issues that we came into or we inherited when I came here and then we did the pay scale or the pay study is once they were already in that top labor slot, that skilled labor spot, regardless of when they got there, how long they'd been there, whether they were topped out or not, they continue to receive cost of living adjustments. But that gap that you see there, Mike, was something that we inherited back in 2017. Nobody received a different raise or a different amount. And we didn't play politics with it. We went ahead and said, look, if we're going to do a 3% cost of living, that's what we're doing. If we're going to do a 5%, that's what we're going to do. So everybody, the spacing they were at when we went into the compensation consultant process is pretty much the spacing they're still at. We didn't move anybody down, certainly. We didn't move a single person down. And it was getting them on the scale. But it is right. There are some folks who've been with us that there were years where they may have been compensated differently, but I can't speak to it because I wasn't here.
Okay, and I apologize. I got a few questions and I really meant to catch up with you because I hate doing this. On the pay scale, we got some annual salaries and some hourly. I don't understand why. Because it looks like the sheet's kind of like if you look at Public Works, you'll see an hourly salary, then you drop down to police, like chief, captain, hourly, sergeant salary. Can we get that in?
So it's the people that have the 20/80 hours, they're at the hourly rate, and the people that have the different salary schedules, like the fire and the police, they have their salaries listed at
Would
the
it be
hours.
possible in the future if the
Just
council?
want to
like,
show all the math on all of
salaries?
them.
Yeah, 'cause I think that's what
Okay.
threw Stacy off, and that's what's got me thrown off.
Okay.
too. And then I also have budget questions.
We'll send an updated sheet out that, and we can adjust it that way. Okay.
And then, no offense, and I'm so sorry, Matt, please don't take this personal. Matt's a W-2 and you're contractual, and I understand your negotiation, and I'm old school, and I'm gonna try to keep my eyes and ears open to understand this or to compromise. I don't like car allowances for employees. I just don't. I'm old school. I think if you go to a meeting, you should drive the city car. When the meeting's over, you come home. If you use a personal phone for business, that's sunshine requestable. I don't like that either. I have a county phone. I have a county car. I looked at other cities. I talked around at a conference, and it's not real common to give a W-2 employee cell phone car allowance. I'm having a hard time with that. I really am. And I'd like to actually get other council members' opinion on it. So that way it's not just me being narrow-minded.
Sure.
So if I can open up the council real quick for interjections, I would like to, please.
Would you, I can respond if you like. Matt receives a car allowance, mainly because he doesn't have a city vehicle to drive. At the same time, Matt attends a number of either training sessions or conferences or functions. The best example I can use is coming up on Wednesday, where he'll go to the general membership meeting of the county EDC. He goes as a representative of the city. He drives out to Hillsborough and back for that. He doesn't turn mileage in for that, but he does get a car allowance. He drives just as much as I do. So I felt it was only fair that his car allowance is equal to mine. One, because when we hired him, we did give him one. It's $240 a month, but here we are 2 or 3 years down the line, and it's not fair and equitable. I don't think it's fair. So that's the reason for the change, the difference. That's why I put it in there for your consideration.
I totally respect that. In fairness, though, the car allowance wasn't brought to council for discussion, or I would have been a thorn back then. I just don't like car allowances and cell phone allowances for W-2. You're contractual, and I totally support that. But I just think if a city employee goes to a meeting in Hillsborough or anywhere, they should be in a city car, because I'm concerned about liability, and it's a presence. So I attend meetings in St. Louis. If I want to go to the ballpark, I got to come home and get my car. I know that going in. That way there's a separation of liability. That way the county knows if I have a drink, I'm on my time in my car. So can I get other council members' opinion? Because this is a budgetary item. This is an employee item. I really like to hear other council members, so I know maybe I'm being bullheaded.
I got that same thing, even though I drive a company truck everywhere. But cell phones I have two, one for business, one for, and that way it keeps it separate. It's that way business is business and pleasure is pleasure, like you said. And even though I got the luxury of this truck that I drive everywhere. But in the city situation, it is a little more scarier, or city, county, whatever, because like you said, if he's on city time, nowadays you can sue for whatever reason. And so it is a scary thing. I mean, back in the day when I first came to councilman, Steve Stowe, we had him a city car, for the city administrator. He drove that everywhere. And Matt, the Clemens had a city vehicle he drove. But it would be nice probably if we would, when you're here, you jump in your city vehicle, and when you're done, you're in your cell phones. I mean, it might save the city a possible, lawsuit, So I mean, I know it's an extra expense, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, at least you're city, after city, you're done.
Mr. Mayor, or I'm sorry, go ahead, Stacy. I'll wait.
You said fair and equitable. And given the price of everything right now, it's not just one-sided, because is 350 really covering potentially what those expenses are? So I would like to see, I agree with Mike, and I agree with Bobby. The phone thing, I definitely agree with. I know it's kind of a pain to carry 2 phones, but in my field, it's more common than not, because you want business is business, pleasure is pleasure. By the same token, with the vehicle thing, it's kind of a presence. I mean, if the city of Festus is somewhere and we're a growing city, it'd be kind of nice if we were represented, that this is our, it says right there. But there's 2 sides to that. And I think we have to look at, can we justify the expense of a car dedicated to Matt's use, or is it Matt or whoever needs to check it out that the car is there and it's available? I just like to see both sides of the equation now that Mike's brought it up. I kind of curious.
Cities vary. I know Todd Belkis in DeSoto, he drives a city vehicle. Jim Caston drives a city truck. But that's, they don't have one. Jason doesn't have one in Crystal. I believe Andy Hickson has one available to him. I always felt, and Carrie might be able to address this better, only because, and all of you who were here, perhaps the kind of mechanical thinking that went into offering that to me when I was hired. I think it was a means with which to get the salary a little bit higher without actually making the salary a little bit higher. Because when I was hired in, it was at, I think, 90. And then for me with the 350 was another $4,500 is what you get with that. So at same situation with Matt when we hired him. He does travel, he uses his personal car. It would be improper for us to not compensate for him that. So
100% agree with that, but he's putting that wear and tear on his vehicle. And at some point, if the mileage is disparative between here's your stipend, here's your mileage, does it make sense to put that liability, that expense, all of that on the city versus doing the stipend? Like Mike is saying, I just would like to see both sides of that. Yeah. That's my thing. And I did have one other question if we have time, but it's not.
I want to make sure we put this to bed. Now we're talking about almost less than $1,300 a year difference in what he's getting now and what I'm asking for. I know you're grumbling about that.
Yeah. But I was on the council when we hired you. And the reason we gave a car allowance, my vote was you lived out of the county. So it's perception's reality.
At the time, we didn't know where I was going to live. It just had to be within 20 miles.
But you weren't in Festus. And that was, you don't ever want a county or a city car outside its limits. Preferably. Yeah. Now you're in the county, and that's why I voted to give you a car allowance. I just don't like W-2 employees. And if he wants to go contractual, which no offense, then we can talk. But when you're a W-2 employee, no, I really think you need a city phone in a city car. I really do. So, but I think Kevin was going to say something. I interrupted him.
No. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of time disparity. I thought we were done with the personnel, Sam, so I didn't mean to take any thunder. There's a couple thoughts here. Matt, would you rather have a city car, or would you rather beat your car up?
Well, Kevin, when I was talking with Greg before I was hired, my predecessor had a take-home vehicle. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but it was a vehicle he didn't just use while he was here at work. It was his take-home vehicle. So he drove it home at night, just like some of the police officers and some of the firemen do.
Right.
I had 2 vehicles in my driveway. I owned a pickup truck and a sedan. I did not need a third vehicle in my driveway. And that's why Greg and I negotiated the car allowance. The car that was used for, that my predecessor used was put back into service and is now a code enforcement vehicle. So the car was absorbed into our fleet and we didn't replace a vehicle, I think, in code enforcement because of that vehicle coming into service. So, my preference is to have the car allowance again, because I don't want another car in my driveway, but if that's what you guys want to do, that's what
So
we'll
that
do.
would be something that you would have to be responsible for on your off time, drive back and forth. And then the phone. So you use your personal phone
Yeah.
to answer all questions because we call you all the time.
Yep.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't have a problem with it. I've done it this way for years. But you have to understand, it's not just me. There are probably a half a dozen other city employees who have a stipend that they get every month they're absolutely.
To cover their phone because of that. So if there was an issue, would you have a problem
Both
giving your phone
foremen.
up?
Okay.
Yeah, carry a phone. So,
It's 17.
I just said there's 3 that do get this. Because the foremen were tired of carrying 2 phones as well, so.
but when we hired you, that was part of the negotiation, but you taking
Yes.
the job
Yes, sir.
and you were the top candidate. So I guess his legal question is to Brian. I mean, do you see a legal issue with this? So if you go to a conference at Lake of the Ozarks and you drive your car, is he officially off the clock at some point? So
That's a
goes to Denver,
reimbursable mileage
wants to have
situation
a
there though.
cocktail?
Kevin, if he
Yeah.
were to attend a conference, obviously the car allowance is intended to cover local travel. So to St. Louis or
Right.
down to even as far as Cape Girardeau. That's how I've
Right.
always used mine. Now, if I go to a conference
Right.
in Columbia, I'm going to turn my mileage in. But
Yeah.
that's the way I've handled it.
Yeah.
My phone, by the way, is my personal phone, always has been, and the city does not pay me for that at all. I think there was a precedent set with a previous councilman that I decided that it was not an expense that I wanted the city to even pay for. I realize it's fully sunshining. I mean, if Sunshine Law wants to take a look at my phone, I do conduct business on it, so it's full Sunshine Law
Yeah.
search. But I don't mean to
One
cut.
of my thoughts.
Kevin, I'm sorry. I don't
One
mean
of my
I don't mean to cut this short, but we can pick this back up in old business at the end of the agenda if you like. We can schedule some more time, but we do need to kind of adjourn this portion of the meeting so that we can have our tax rate hearing and jump into our regular meeting, sir. So I'll turn it back over to you.
I just have one question. Do you have an estimate on what you want the all-inclusive playground to be? I have 500,000 for the pickleball, 400,000 for the splash pad.
million.
What do you think, Charlotte? $1 million? All right. Well, I think there's 3 pieces that we've talked about here, which is the splash pad, the pickleball court, and the all accessible playground. Why don't we save that for old business? We'll do it at the end of the council meeting, but we'll go ahead and conduct tonight's business